I'm on the journey of making a case for my glasses. In the last episode, I used an envelope bag as a reference. I first copied the pattern on paper, then made a sample with microfiber instead of leather. After trying it out, I changed the side design to match how I actually use the bag. Today, in this episode, I will show you how I made that side piece from start to finish. My steps, what I was thinking, and what tool I used. Hopefully, it's be useful for you too. So this is the one I picked, a light tan veg-tanned leather with no surface coating at all. The flat side is smooth and is about 1.6 to 1.8 mm thick. I cut two big pieces from the edge. Part of it is for testing. Here's a paper template for the leather strip. I didn't really measure the length. If you want it chunkier or slimmer, just tweak it to your liking. I'm cutting along the straighter part here. It's a good way to save material. So this is all the pieces I need. Cutting is all finished. The next step is skiving. The leather isn't all the same thickness, so I will run it through the skiving machine to even it out. And this is the presser foot I'll be using. And I'm not using this guide for now. Switching the presser foot is easy. If you work with leather a lot, you know there's always a ton of dust. The machine never stays really clean. You will see the difference after skiving. It's like giving it a little trim, like a haircut. This leather is pretty thick, so while I'm skiving, I constantly tweaking the machine and watching the presser foot angle, making sure the blade stays sharp. I have to check the thickness with a gauge all the time. Some leathers are tougher to skive because the bag isn't smooth. It depends on how dense the leather is, so I had to sharpen my blade again and even it all out. Once I finished the first piece, the rest was easier. This is what it looks like before and after skiving. A quick tip is, to get it right, your blade needs to be super sharp. Now I'm working with the leather strips. I'm setting this to around 0.7 mm thick. The skiving part is done for now. Next, I'm going to cut the outer shape, and then I'll skive the edges. To cut the leather, I stick the paper pattern on with double-sided tape. That way, it won't move around. I use the paper pattern as a guide, but for straight lines, it's best to use a ruler. For curves, just follow the pattern and keep your knife straight up and down. When I cut corners, I usually angle the blade inward to get a nice curve, but sometimes I accidentally cut the paper. So to avoid that, use a sharp blade and try to keep your hand relaxed. The leather is cut, and I left a space for folding over later. Don't forget to cut notches. Besides the central one, the other two are lining up the pieces later. This is super important. I used to think a 0.5 mm fold over at the top was enough, so I made it 10 mm wide. I slide the leather in the middle, and I'll skive it thinner here later since it will be sewn with a strip. Now I'm cutting the rest of the leather pieces. Same process, same way. One thing to remember, change your blade regularly. If it starts feeling rough or slow, change it immediately. Everything's cut now. I've got two lengths of leather strips. The short ones go in the middle, and the longer ones get sewn on the outside edge. But we still need to thin those edges out. I'll show you the side piece is around 1.5 mm thick, and the strip is 0.7 mm. Here is how it looks after skiving and putting the edges together. It's 3 layers now. Remember, more pieces will be added later. When the middle parts are joined, it looks like this. The flat side isn't very clean yet, but I'll fix that later. Before I thin the edges, I first tried it out on scraps that are the same thickness. When skiving edges, I usually use the presser foot like this. When I switch presser foot, I need to reset the angle, height, and blade position. Changing it affects everything. At the same time, I put on the stopper. I mostly use it when I'm skiving edges. When I'm adjusting the machine, I test with leather to make sure everything's right. Like here, after skiving, you can see if the width matches what I said. I plan to skive part to be 7 mm wide, with thickness going from 0.7 down to 0.4 mm. The idea is to create a smooth transition from thin to thick. After I'm sure it's all set, I get started. First, I skive the outlines. I have to do all the pieces that look the same in one go, or else I'll have to tweak the machine again. Next, I'm going to skive the middle part. I set a different skiving width this time, so I had to adjust the stopper. Here's how it looks when it's down. Since the leather fits in differently on each side, I can't get a perfect skive at the bottom like this. So the left and the right sides ended up looking a bit different. Next, I'm going to skive the top fold over area. I set the fold over width to 10 mm, so I thought it made sense to adjust the stopper to the same width to test it on scrap. I found it actually didn't reach that size. It was much shorter than I wanted, so I had to widen the stopper setting, which made the skived area wider, to check if the match is what I wanted. What I want is a 10 mm fold, not a 10 mm skive. So I had two options: keep widening the stopper, or leave the stopper and lower the pressure foot to skive thinner. I went with lowering the foot and got a bad fold over. This one is closer to what I'm aiming for. Here's a side-by-side comparison. After making sure the width is right, I checked the thickness and the skive transition. So I started the real work, and this is the final look. The side piece is finished. Next, I'll skive the edges of the strips. I wanted about 3 mm width, so turned the stopper down again. Tested it on same scrap leather. The thickness looked good, so I skived the real piece. This is how it turned out. Here's another angle to show the hand motion. Stay relaxed. Don't pull and yank. My machine fits the leather pretty slowly. Why skive the edges of the strips? Remember that when you make a bag, you stack lots of leather layers, so each edge has to be thin. That's it. Here's how the short and the long strips turned out. Just to remember to keep your blade sharp, or the skiving won't be nice and smooth. This is the finished side piece, so that's all for skiving. Now I'm ready to start putting everything together. This is the glue I usually use, and it comes with thinner. Thinner dries super fast. When the glue gets like this, it's useless. It clumps up and pulls like strings. I used to struggle with this a lot, but thinner solved it. After adding it, I mix it well again. I start by gluing the strips, but just on the edges. Treat the long strips the same way. Applying at least 2 coats of glue, leaving the middle unglued so they stay flexible. If glued all over, they will feel too stiff and unnatural. Line up the edges and stick them. The glue's just to hold things for now, because stitching will secure them later. That's it for the strips. This is how they look with glue just on the edges. I'll putting them aside for later. I put the short strips onto the middle of the side piece, left some extra length on the strip, glue the edges first, then finish both ends. Fold the strips into the right angle at the ends. A bit of extra leather folds up at the corner, and that needs to be glued in place. To keep both ends even, I match the fold angle to the edge before sticking it down. Once it's glued, I trim off the extra bit. That leftover piece gets tucked neatly behind the side part, When you put them next to each other, you can clearly see the before and after. It's pretty much the same for the top side, just need to finish it under the folded edge. But I noticed there wasn't a clear spot to line it up, so I marked it before moving on. I used a 10mm gauge to mark the fold line, just to remind myself not to let the end of the strip go past that point. The corners glued and trimmed, and the extra bit is tucked behind the leather. Before sewing, everything needs to be glued down properly. Besides, I also realized that I forgot to mark the fold line on the back. Without it, it's hard to tell where to begin and end the stitching. So I'm adding that now. Once I put it all together, I saw the strip was too high. Had to take it off and stick it down lower. To be honest, this kind of back and forth happens a lot. A lot of it is guesswork anyway. I moved the strip down by about 2 to 3 millimeters. Once flip it over, it was clear some extra leather needed to be trimmed off. One big reason I do all these tests is to mark every position and step clearly on the paper pattern, so I won't mess it up next time. With these marks, I now know exactly where the stitching should start and end on the back. The two side pieces are stuck together. It's time to sew. I'm sorry I didn't get good footage on this part, but no worries, I'll show you the sewing process in another episode. This time, you've seen how I went from the side piece pattern to cutting, skiving, and gluing, plus my thought process along the way. This side piece looks good, but I've made some tweaks to the design, so I'll share more details next time. See you soon!